I'm out of the trailer. If you have a 2022 Ram 2500 and you're looking for a tonneau cover that's going to give you that extra security, but also kind of give you more of that clean look that you would get with a soft roll-up tonneau cover, then the Pace Edwards Switchblade tonneau cover is going to be a great option for you. So let's check it out. What I really like about a hard tonneau cover, not only is it going to help you with that fuel economy and give you more of that sleek design, especially with a Pace Edwards one, since they're very low profile to your vehicle, is also going to give you that extra security. Well, roll-up or soft roll-up tonneau covers are really nice. They're going to do a great job of what they do. If someone really wanted inside your bed, they could just simply cut into the material and get there. With this, they won't be able to. So if you're someone who does like to carry a lot of valuables, either you got a lot of camping gear back in your truck, you want to take that to wherever you're going, but you got a lot of stops to make in between. Or if you have a lot of tools back here as well, you want to make sure they're nice and secure so no one can take them. And with this being a canister style, they're just going to operate really smoothly. Doesn't take a lot of work to really get the move. You can see it's just going to move by itself until it's all the way secured at the back of your bed. And really, with a 8-foot bed, you have plenty of space to spare, so having a canister style isn't really that big of a con, because a lot of canister styles, especially in smaller beds like a 5.5 foot, that's going to take a lot of your bed space. It's really going to limit you. In this case, we got a lot of room to play around with, so honestly, I think it's worth it. Another reason why I like the canister style more than, let's say, a fold-up style is because, like you just saw, this is really easy to move, but specifically for an 8-foot bed application. Because let's say you do have that fold-up style, typically those panels are pretty heavy because they're giving you a lot of protection. Now when you have it on an 8-foot bed, you're folding that all the way up to your cab, especially if you're going to be folding it up against your window, if you want to save maximum space in your bed, which is nice, but doing so makes that tonneau cover extremely heavy and hard to move, especially since we do have a taller truck anyways. So not only are you moving all that weight, but you're trying to move it at a higher level. And I know I talked about this taking up a little bit of space, so let's actually get some measurements. The first measurement I want to get is going to be the total distance out. It's sitting, and that's sitting around at 15 inches. So again, that's not too much space. It is something to think about if, let's say, you are really maximizing everything in your bed and you have those taller items, let's say like a fridge or some type of washer or dryer, then you might run into an issue there, but still pretty unlikely you're going to take up all that space. And then if we see what's the space underneath here, because this space is still usable, you just won't be able to stack it super high. That's going to be coming at a little bit under 10 inches. So if you have anything smaller like the types of totes or crates or some toolbox, you still could put it right here. But the next thing I want to make sure is if we have this fully unrolled, and if you have anything in the bed like, let's say, a fifth wheel cover or just a fifth wheel, you want to make sure that's going to be able to clear. And this is going to be sitting a little bit under 19 inches. So just make sure your fifth wheel will sit at a maximum height, let's say maybe 18.5. It should be fine. Most cases, this will clear with most of them, but I just recommend just double checking your fifth wheel. As for how much this is going to stick up from your rails, it's pretty much seamless. Now the tallest part is going to be the canister, but you won't be able to see that out of your back window since it's going to sit right underneath your headrest in the back seats. And when it comes to the rails themselves, this is almost seamless. It's maybe sticking up by a couple millimeters. I will say it is blocking some points on our truck though, and it's going to be blocking some of our stake pockets. So if you really need access to those, then you might need to find a different solution, or maybe you won't be able to just get this to work at all. But the good thing is, if you really do like this tonneau cover and you really do need access to your stake pockets at some point, but you don't need it all the time, you can remove this. Because the way this is going to be held in place is just simply with these clamps. and this won't require any type of drilling or modifications to your vehicle. Now when it comes to securing the tonneau cover on your bed, no modifications are needed, but when it comes to drainage, then make sure no water really stays in the cover itself, because it is a canister. It's really easy for water to kind of build up in there. They give you drain tubes for that. And those drain tubes are going to let the water really flow out and not sit in your bed. Now today I didn't have to install these because our neighbor wants to go a different route. They're actually going to be routing their water through a different source on their bed. But typically I would just come over here and stick this into a hole right around here, and it just kind of fits in and turns. So these are really easy to install, and sometimes people don't need to make any modifications, because a lot of times you're going to have some holes already on your bed, or there's just some little plugs on top of them that you can remove. But in some cases you will have to make some modifications where you just have to drill a hole small enough where you can fit this tube through. But in my opinion, I think this is a great tonneau cover because the operation just feels smooth. Especially for something this large or this big of a truck, this is going to go a long way and just kind of give you more of a clean finish, and also help secure any of your tools. Something else to really think about are other options around. Now there are different tonneau covers, especially by Pace Edwards. One of them is the full metal jackrabbit, which is going to be completely metal if you want something more of that aesthetic, something a little bit more rugged. Now when it comes to an installation, this one can be a little bit difficult sometimes, but the biggest thing is just having a little bit of patience to get through that. Now if maybe you watch our installation and you feel you're not super comfortable with that, we actually have a dealer locator on our website. I'd recommend just checking that out to find a dealer near you so they can get that installed for you. But let's kind of check out that installation now. To begin the installation, we're going to lay out our little parts just to make sure we have everything. So just make sure you're referencing the instructions, but what you should have are 2 rails for your tonneau cover, and you're going to have the canister itself. You're also going to get a bag with additional hardware so you can properly install everything. And then we're going to have a box that's going to include our hardware for our clamps. And then finally, the last thing you want to make sure of is that you have the top of your canister. I like to leave the plastic on it for the time being, just so I don't scratch it up. But from here, we're really going to start by getting our canister into place. And to do that, I got James here with me today. Just make this process a little bit easier. You can do it by yourself by wrapping that strap around the center of this to put it on your bed rails, but that can be a little bit difficult sometimes, and this is just the easier way of doing it. So we're just going to lift up, grabbing either side of the edge, and walk it into place, and then just roughly lay it down. And that's why I like putting the box in here too, because we still need to put our rails on our tonneau cover, and once those rails are on, they'll be able to support this and make sure nothing bends on us. We can move over to installing our rails. I already have one side installed, and it doesn't take that much time. We want to just start off by taking off this painter tape at the very end here. This is really just for packaging purposes, so might as well take it off now. And the second packaging that we want to remove at this point, I'm going to put that there for a moment, is going to be underneath our rails. You're going to have this adhesive paper that kind of sticks and protects your foam. Again, that's just for shipping, so we can take that off now. And I'm actually just going to peel it up from the top. Kind of satisfying to remove since it is kind of seamless. And with that off, we can kind of line everything into place. And what we're trying to line up is going to be this hole. And this hole is going to line up with the hole on our tonneau cover right there. The process for this is going to be taking our blanket and putting it through this channel. So I'll show you how we do that. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky since it is a 8-foot rail. So if you have someone at the very end that can kind of help you out by supporting you. And we're just going to grab that blanket and feed it through that channel there. Just like that. You push this
all the way against the back side of your tonneau cover. And we're going to grab our bolt and just going to hand thread that in to begin with. I recommend hand threading because trying to start this off with the socket and wrench can be a little bit difficult. Typically I would do this from the inside of the bed, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a better idea what was happening here, so I'll try doing it from outside. And once that's hand threaded on, we're going to grab a 7/16 socket and wrench and tighten it down the rest of the way. Once you have this completed on one side, then we'll repeat that on the other. And something else that might help you when you're moving over to that second rail is taping the side that you already did. What I like to do is just put a little bit of masking tape down on top of the rail, so when I'm working on one side, my other rail doesn't fall off. I also like to keep them in place for when I go into the next step, and that's going to be lowering our tonneau cover completely onto our bed rails. That's just going to kind of keep everything aligned so it doesn't move too much. And what I'm going to do is just lift up on our tonneau cover some and then move this box out of my way. Just like that. And you'll lower it down. A better way of doing that typically is to actually have that strap wrapped around completely. This is a little bit of a lighter tonneau cover, so I feel pretty comfortable doing that for the most part. But I do recommend just lowering it down with the strap instead. But now we can kind of move on to fully securing down our rails. And we can start installing our clamps. So there's going to be 2 per side. Now on your tailgate side, that's going to be where your shorter clamps are. So notice the difference between these brackets. This shorter one is going to go with your tailgate. This one here is going to go on your bulkhead side. Same thing is going to be for these hand knobs with the bolts on them. The shorter one is going to be with your tailgate, long one with your bulkhead side. But they both will still have these same pivoting arms installed on them. So let me show you how to do that now. When we're installing the clamps, we need to find these reliefs. There's going to be one on the tailgate side and one on the bulkhead side. Right now I'm on the tailgate side. And the way your clamps are going to install is like this. We're going to make sure that these grooves, you see here, line up with that opening. The best way to do that is you might have to rearrange your rail a little bit, but you're going to put it in at an angle and press in like that. And it's sitting in place. Now typically I want them to be as far apart as possible so we get a good coverage throughout the whole tonneau cover. So I'm going to try pushing that downwards. You might have to wiggle it some or spray some silicone. Sometimes it goes on really easy like that. And what we're going to do next is put that pivoting arm on. Now the way this is going to go on is you notice there's this opening right here. That's where the end of this is going to go through. So I'm just going to press it in. You might have to adjust how this is sitting on there. And what this is doing is applying pressure into that upper corner of the rail. You might need to adjust this fit too because you want to make sure this is fully secured on here, it's not overhanging at all. And sometimes you might have some tabs that interfere with it at the very top. What you'll have to do in those situations is find a different spot along here. And if you can't find any on this side, you can just push this to the other side until you have a nice flush area. Once you've done that, then we're going to grab that bolt, the hand knob on it, and it's also going to have a split washer and then a flat washer on it. You're going to put that through until it's all the way across, and then you're going to grab one of those more cylinder nuts, just like this, and connect it to the other side. And we're not going to fully secure this down yet. We're just going to do it until it's lightly hand tight. And then we're going to repeat that process for the bulkhead side. And now that our rails are loosely tightened down, what I'm going to do is actually make sure they're far enough from our tailgate. The way we're going to do that is by grabbing our tailgate and just kind of slowly bringing it up here. If it looks like there's enough of a gap, we can close this all the way. like that. And what we're looking for is for at least a 1/16 of an inch of a gap in between that foam pad in there and our tailgate. And right now, it looks like there's still a little bit of a gap, so what I'm gonna do is just kind of adjust this slightly. We're just gonna pull on our rails, just a tad bit, double check. It's looking a little bit better. I might adjust a little bit more, but we're gonna be repeating that same process on the other side until everything is nice and square. And once you've tightened down those clamps down to the specification in your instructions, then we can check to make sure that our rails are the correct distance from each other. You can actually reference in your instructions to find that exact number for your tonneau cover. Another way we can check is just by coming over to the blanket of it and just kind of moving it back and forth. You want to ensure that it doesn't have more than 1/8 of play in it. And then I'm also just going to pull on it some and make sure we still get a good amount of movement here. And just kind of check that all the way down.
So when I was testing my tonneau cover out, I noticed this one was a little bit loose at the very tailgate end. The bulkhead side was good, but what I'm going to do now is put some shims right here. You can tell we have this point that has this almost like a collar around it, and it has this foam piece or pad behind it. What I'm going to do is grab our shim, and there's going to be some adhesive backing to it, or just some paper. And this is going to be sticky on one side now. And I've already loosened this up again. And I'm just going to stick it right in line with that pad. Just like that. Doesn't have to be perfect, but pretty dang close. And then I'm going to re-tighten this down. And I'm just going to do that on either side since those are about a 1/16 of an inch. So if you're off by 1/16 of an inch, you really only need one. If you're off by more of a 1/8 of an inch, then I'd recommend grabbing 2 of them, 1 per side, and then we can check this again.
And next up, we're going to put on those kickstands because you probably noticed these rails kind of bend in or bend down some, and they're no longer level with the top of your bed. So this is going to help us out with that. And what I'm going to do is push this through just like that. You want to make sure that side with the flat end is towards your bed. We're just putting through that hole right there. And we're going to grab our flat washer and a lock washer. And for now, we're just going to loosely secure this down with a flange nut. And what we're going to do from this point is pivot this until it's facing towards the bed. You want to make sure this is as flat as possible. So I might even loosen it up some until we get a good fit on here. And then I'm going to tighten it back down. And as I'm doing this, I'm going to tighten it and I'm going to watch and make sure the very top of these rails become level and are as flat as possible. And with that done, we'll just come back down when everything looks level and tighten down the wing nuts the rest of the way. And from here, what I'm going to do is secure this extra patch. Now this extra thing of hook and loop is really designed so you can connect it to your strap. So it's a little bit easier to grab. So what we're going to do is feed it through the clamp on your tailgate side. Doesn't matter if it's on the passenger or driver's side. It's really up to you what your preference is. And we're going to grab this now. What I like to do is just connect them to begin with. I just find it a little bit easier to work with. Just like that. And then from here, you're just going to stick it at the very end. Wherever you like, whatever's going to be easiest for you to remember and find. Just by pulling off that plastic backside and then sticking it into place. And then we can move on to the next step. And what we're going to do is start kind of lubricating our seals. So you're going to have your sweep seal right here, and then you're going to have your wear strip beneath it. So what we're going to do is just take this out. This does come with your kit, and I like to just run it down one way and then come back the opposite way. And it's just going to allow for a little bit more smoother operation, especially when you're starting to get this going. Another thing you want to be wary of too, is just make sure that you don't have any part of your wear strip that's or sweep seal that's kind of bent up or kind of tucked underneath something. A lot of times when you're really testing out the tonneau cover and pulling it out by the blanket, it'll get caught on something. So just make sure when you're starting off, it doesn't get caught on anything, because then it might start to learn its shape. So better to nip that in the bud at the beginning and then get going. But once this side is done, just repeat that on the other side. And what we can do from this point is start installing this foam pad. Now what this is really for is going to be your bulkhead side. And what I'll typically do is just got to see how it's going to fit on here, whether if it's going to sit on top, just like this, or more so inside of our bed. And what kind of helps me kind of make that decision is how our cap's going to sit on. So I'll roughly put that in place to see what it's going to look like. Just like that. It seems like this is going to be mainly on that corner right there. It's not perfectly placed on here, but what I'm going to do from here is that foam pad is probably going to get in the way, so I'm probably going to put it on the inside at this point. So what I'll do is just start from one side, removing that paper, because that's protecting the adhesive backing to it. I'm going to go over to this corner, place it down, and just apply it just like this. Pulling that paper as I remove this. And then if you have any excess, what I'll do is just cut that off, since we won't need that. Now when you get this, you might notice that one of your caps aren't installed, and if it is, that's one step you don't have to do, but if it isn't, what we're going to do is just line up this groove with the very end of this topper. It'll really just kind of form to the shape of it. Just like that. You want to make sure you're putting the right side on. You just want to make sure that side with all that extra weather stripping is matching the correct side, and that these holes line up with the ones that are on this cap. I can see daylight through that one, and I can see daylight through that one. So I'm looking pretty good. And then I'm going to start lining it up to our canister. So you're just going to line up these holes here with this one right beneath it. Just like that. Then once it looks roughly in place, I'll put this screw down and then just attempt to tighten it in place. If it's not lining up properly, then we can just kind of adjust this until it kind of seats into that hole. And really the last step we're going to be focusing on is just making sure it's working properly. We're not finding too much resistance, and that it's going to close right. And sometimes it won't close completely when you're first using it, so what I'll do is just do this a couple times since we just put that sweep seal on there. That's just going to help that kind of spread out, kind of make sure everything's moving a little bit more smoothly. And after I've done that a few times, I'll come back with a little bit more of it for one last coat. But that'll pretty much do it for our look at the installation and some of the features of the Pace Edwards Switchblade Tonneau cover on our 2022 Ram 2500. I'm Matt. Thanks for watching.